All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to get into a really deep philosophical debate. We're talking about the very architecture of reality itself. Think about it. You've got everything from tiny little quarks all the way up to massive galaxies, right? You've got your thoughts, you've got the table in front of you. Is all of that just a random pile of stuff? Just a big, messy, cosmic jumble?
Or is there something more going on? A lot of philosophers have suspected for a long time that there's a kind of hidden order, a structure, a hierarchy, where some things are way more fundamental and other things, well, they only exist because of those fundamental things.
And that idea gets us right to the heart of it. It's this gut feeling, really, about reality's secret structure. This idea that some things exist in virtue of other things. Now hold on, this isn't your standard cause and effect, like a cue ball hitting the 8-ball. Nope, this is something deeper. It's about what makes a thing, well, what it is.
And you know what? This idea is actually super intuitive when you think about it. Take a water molecule, H2O. It exists because it's made of hydrogen and oxygen atoms, right? Or think about this. The sentence, "snow is white," is true because of the actual fact that snow is white. A statue? It exists in virtue of the chunk of marble it's carved from. See? It's not about one thing causing another. It's about dependence, about what makes something up.
So philosophers needed a way to really grab onto this powerful in virtue of idea. And so they came up with this new tool. Think of it like a master key for all of metaphysics. And they call it grounding.
Okay, so what is grounding exactly? Well, the official definition is a primitive, non-causal relationship. Now, primitive is just philosopher speak for something so basic you can't really break it down any further. It's like trying to define the color red. You just have to point to it. So grounding is this bedrock idea that helps us map out that layered structure of reality we were talking about, separating the truly fundamental stuff from everything else that's just built on top of it.
All right, this next part is super important. We got to talk about the difference between big G grounding and small g relations. So, big G grounding is the big umbrella idea, the one general in virtue of connection. The small g relations, those are all the specific ways it happens, like how parts make up a whole, or how members make up a set. The whole point is that big G is supposed to be that master concept that unifies all these different small g examples.
But of course, right when grounding was getting really popular, a huge challenge comes along. A really powerful skeptical attack, led by the philosopher Jessica Wilson. And she basically looked at this shiny new master key and said, you know what? This thing doesn't actually open any doors. And yeah, she was not subtle about it. She flat out wrote in 2014 that philosophers should just drop grounding completely. She argued it wasn't any better and in some ways was actually worse than the old messy ideas it was meant to replace. Ouch.
So what's her main beef? It's simple, but it's a real knockout punch. She says big G grounding is totally, uselessly uninformative. It's just too vague. It sounds important, but it doesn't actually tell you anything you didn't already know.
Let's really dig into her argument here. Okay, take a huge claim in philosophy. Physical facts ground mental facts. So the brain grounds the mind. Sounds profound, right? But Wilson's point is, what does that actually tell us? Does it tell us if our minds are real things? Nope. Does it tell us if our thoughts are just brain chemistry? No. Does it explain how a feeling can make you move your arm? Not at all. All the huge important questions that people have been fighting about for centuries are left completely unanswered. Just saying one thing grounds the other, well, it leaves all the interesting stuff off the table.
So Wilson's attack comes in two parts. First, she says grounding fails at its most basic job, telling us what's fundamental. Her solution, just say fundamentality is the primitive concept and be done with it. Second, she goes after the unity argument. She says all those small g relations are just way too different to be lumped together. It's like trying to say that being made of wood and being a member of a team are the same kind of thing. It just doesn't work.
So is that it? Is grounding dead in the water? Well, not so fast, because a bunch of philosophers, like Marco Cortaberria, have stepped up to mount a pretty powerful defense.
And the defense starts with a really clever move, a killer question actually. Wilson's big charge is that big G grounding is uninformative, right? Okay, but is it uniquely uninformative?
And bam, this is the counterpunch. Let's take one of those small g relations that Wilson is fine with, like composition. So you say my body parts compose my body. Sounds straightforward, but wait a second.
Does that statement answer the big questions? Does your body exist as a separate thing from its parts? Can you just reduce your body to a pile of cells? C, it has the exact same problem. So here's the kicker. If that criticism sinks big G grounding, it sinks her preferred small g relations right along with it. It's not a problem just for grounding. Okay, next up, the defenders take on her argument about what fundamental means. Remember, Wilson says you can't really define it, you just have to accept it. But the grounding folks have a super simple, kind of elegant definition. The fundamental stuff? It's just the stuff that isn't grounded by anything else. It's the bedrock, the bottom of the stack. Now, Wilson thinks defining something by what it isn't is a bit shady, metaphysically suspect, she calls it. But the other side says, hey, this gives us a perfectly clear, solid way to know exactly what we're talking about when we say fundamental.
But that still leaves Wilson's toughest challenge on the table. The idea that all those small g relations are just a chaotic mess that can't be unified. And for this, the defense pulls out a really classic, elegant solution. It all comes down to classification.
Just think about it in a way we all learned in school. You have a big, broad category, what philosophers call a genus. Let's say polygon. A polygon is just any flat shape with straight sides. Simple. Then, underneath that big category, you have all the different species, like triangles and squares and hexagons. They're all really different from each other, right? A triangle is not a square, but they are all, without a doubt, polygons. Okay, now let's plug that right into our philosophy problem. Big G grounding, that's our genus. It's the big category, a relationship of non-causal determination. And all those different small g relations we've been talking about, how a statue is made of marble, how a fact makes a statement true, those are just the different species that live inside that big genus. And that right there is the big aha moment. This whole genus-species idea solves the problem perfectly. It lets all the small g's be super different from each other, just like a triangle is different from a square, but they can still all be unified under one big idea, the genus, which is big G grounding. They don't need to be clones of each other to be in the same family.
So where does all this leave us? Well, this entire debate points to a really profound shift in how we might think about everything. It kind of suggests that maybe, just maybe, if we really want to crack the biggest puzzles out there, things like consciousness or free will, we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe we need to stop asking what causes what and start asking a much deeper, more fundamental question. What grounds what?